Good evening, everybody. Start here in a couple minutes and leave a little bit of time to see if anybody else jumps on. Side of your screen to chat with everyone and ask questions, and I would recommend that. Charlie is here to help us moderate some of those questions, and I will also kind of try and keep an eye out for any questions that come up because I want to make sure this is relevant and effective for everybody on the call tonight. So with that being said, let's move forward and talk a little bit about attachment. I'm sure most of you, if not all on the call tonight, are very aware of kind of the buzzword going around of attachment, and it has been going around for several years, and what that is. And basically attachment is, like the slide says, a deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another across time and space. So we can all think of many different people that matter greatly in our lives, and that we can look at a historical view of those folks and how they have impacted our lives. And in addition to that, look at how each one of those people has impacted how we see ourselves. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Bruce Perry and the work that he's done, and he defines attachment. In the field of infant development, attachment refers to a special bond characterized by the unique qualities of the special bond that forms in a maternal, infant, or primary caregiver relationship. The attachment bond has several key elements. It's enduring emotional relationship with a specific person. It brings safety, comfort, soothing, pleasure, and the threat or the loss of that person can invoke distress, immediate, intense distress for an infant. So if we look at that dance that we can see parents making with children, child care parents making with, or child care teachers making with infants, we can see these things happening, these relationships forming, the stress that infants produce when someone leaves the room or if there is a stranger present. So this is kind of an example of that relationship. Attachment is a pattern of interaction that develops over time when an infant and a caregiver engage, and a strong disposition to seek proximity to and contact with a specific figure, and to do so in certain situations, like when you are sick, frightened, tired. So I think all of us can really think through where we're witnessing these sorts of things developing and happening right in front of our eyes currently, and in our own histories, as well as in our own personal lives. So if we want to take a peek right here at this nice little graphic of how attachment develops in the first year of life, you can see here at the top, in the top kind of rectangle square, need. So we see a child that's going to express a need. So this could be anywhere from crying for a bottle or a diaper change to a child running up to their parent in the grocery store because a stranger has looked at them and they're not sure how to handle that. They may have a rage reaction, which reading this can kind of invoke a little bit of response for you because it says rage, but in essence that is what a child does when they're screaming and crying for a need. But what happens is that signals a caregiver to provide gratification or relief for that need. So I'm going to change a diaper. I'm going to make a bottle. I'm going to pick you up and make you feel safe. I'm going to rock you to sleep. I'm going to regulate whatever sort of strong emotion that you have. And then trust develops as a result. So we have this repetitive sort of cycle that's occurring for infants and their caregivers, and we have trust that develops. And we'll talk a little bit later about how that cycle then impacts how one begins to develop their own sense of adequacy, not only in their caregivers, but also in themselves. We know that in order for these things to happen, there has to be different sorts of input that occurs. So eye contact, touch, movement, smiles, engaging visual components as well as auditory components can really support engagement and interaction. We know, all of us know what happens if these needs aren't met. We have children that begin to learn that adults are not trustworthy, that they cannot depend on them for what their needs are and their needs to be met. And so we often then see this dance turn into something different, that we often then see these negative behaviors begin to become a little bit more present within relationships and can become very confusing for caregivers. We are going to quickly watch a video that talks a little bit more about some early experiments that were done around attachment and the development of caregiver interaction and desire for connection. I don't know if any of you have seen the Harlow's Monkeys videos. There's several of them out on YouTube. It can be difficult a little bit to watch just because little monkeys are so cute. But the information that is provided in the videos is timeless, and it has really helped to inform a lot of work into today. So we're going to quick watch this video and then discuss once it's over.
Let me show you a monkey raised on a nursing wire mother. Now here are 106's two mothers. As you can see, it was weaned on a wire mother. Here's baby 106. Watch.
He's going to the wire mother.
He's got to eat to live.
Oh, he's going back.
He's back on the cloth mother, and he'll stay on the cloth mother. Actually, this baby spends 17 to 18 hours a day on the cloth mother, and less than 1 hour a day on the wire mother. We had predicted that the variable of contact comfort would be a variable of measurable importance, but we were unprepared to find that it completely overwhelmed and overshadowed all other variables, including those of nursing.
Frankly, Doctor, if it comes to a choice between wire and cloth, it's reasonable to expect that any child will go to the cloth. It's a matter of creature comfort, like a baby with its blanket. But is this really love?
Well, what do you mean by saying that a baby loves its mother? Certainly one thing we mean is that it gets a great feeling of security in the presence of the mother. Now, Mr. Collingwood, wouldn't you say that if you frightened a baby, that it went running to its mother, was comforted, and then all the fear disappeared and was replaced by a complete sense of security that that baby loved its mother? Now, in this experiment, this is the apparatus we use.
That looks diabolical.
That's just the way the baby monkey feels about it. Flashing eyes, loud sounds, moving mechanical parts, all of these things are designed to frighten a monkey. Now here we have a peaceful, resting baby monkey. Let's find out what his reactions to his mother are when we frighten him.
He's scared, all right.
And that's what any child will do in a similar situation.
He runs away.
It's more than running away. He was running to his mother, to touch her, to drive away his fear. Contact with the mother changes his entire personality. Look, now he's actually threatening the diabolical object. All right. This gives us part of the picture of the strength of infantile love. This is a 6-foot square room with a few toys and other objects. But to the monkey, it's much more menacing. We know that when our own children are taken to a strange place without their mother, they are often overwhelmed with fear. This room is just such a new and strange environment for the baby monkeys. No mother is in there. Now, let's put a monkey into the room. Notice how cautiously he enters the room. He's searching for comfort, but nothing relieves his disturbance. Now we'll take the baby monkey out and put in a wire mother.
Now this one was nursed by a wire mother.
That's right. All is right.
She doesn't seem to help much.
Now, we'll try the same test with a cloth mother in the room. You see the contrast in the behavior? Despite the fact that the wire mother nursed him, she could offer this infant nothing in the way of affection and security. But here the monkey, by rubbing against the cloth mother, as if he was seeking as much contact comfort as he could get, builds up his reservoir of affection and security. First his body relaxes as the fear disappears. But above and beyond this, new positive response patterns appear. He now goes out to explore and investigate this new, strange world. He is now a normal, happy, curious baby.
Okay, so that is always a very interesting and educational video to watch, and it dates back, I can't remember the year, but I think into the 60s of when some of this research began with the cloth monkey and the wire monkey. I don't know, you guys can maybe say yes on the question portion now if you have ever seen any of the videos on this. But it indicates the times how impactful even a cloth mother could be to a monkey versus a wire monkey where their nutrition was, or a wire mother where nutrition was given. The cloth monkey that was able to provide, or the cloth mother which provided comfort and consistency for the monkeys, was so impactful that they fled to be with that mother even in times of distress, and sought comfort in that while in a strange room where there were different items to entice the monkey. I think one of the interesting things about this video is that I wish we would have been able to see a bit more of is, given some time with the cloth mother, how it would have taken, what sort of patterns we would have seen from the monkeys to come off the mother, explore a little bit, and come back, because that is exactly what we see in our children right now as they begin to develop some independence and autonomy, which we'll speak of in just a little bit, which is one of the most integral parts of the process of the development of attachment, and where we often see some of these quote-unquote behaviors of you're spoiling your child, outside of always holding when they're an infant. So this is where some of the very early research on attachment came, and it really gives us some good strong, hard evidence and research about that mother-infant relationship and how it is so raw and innate to seek something of comfort when in distress. Let's see. Okay, so the attachment process forms, so again, some of this attachment stuff is not totally new information to everybody. We know that this process is fundamental in the development of so many things for young children. And the process and the dance of infants and mothers falling in love is incredibly integral in the process of attachment. And this is where we often get comments at the grocery store or from our aunts or grandmothers or passerbyers, oh, you're spoiling that baby, you're holding them too much, where I think it's incredibly important for us to really think about the process of attachment and going back to this diagram where when a child signals a need and provides a reaction for us to respond to, and we gratify that or provide relief to that, they gain trust. We can imagine, and probably all have experienced a case throughout our professional careers, that we have seen an infant go signaling a need and it not being met. And I mean, I remember a young infant that I worked with, and actually one of the participants on the call, Ingrid and I were working together at this time, and I remember this young infant girl was in foster care, and she came in to the child care center that Ingrid and I were both working at, and she laid on the floor on the boppy, sat on laps, was fed, refused eye contact, never cried ever, would turn her head when people would try to engage with her, because she had so many repeated experiences of needs not being met. She actually gave up trying to signal her needs. And it was a beautiful opportunity for us to see the process of reversal in that, with a wonderful foster parent, a wonderful child care infant teacher, and to watch her go through the process of regaining trust in adults. But it will very much happen that infants will lose trust in us. And that is, sometimes you see them completely disappear and no longer signal, but the reverse of that is you can often see negative behaviors begin to pop up in an effort to engage adults, which you often hear people saying that you're going to spoil that baby by holding them too much or rushing to their needs. But the opposite of that is, you then, when the negative behaviors start, that's when the blame also begins to start coming, saying, you know, he's on the floor throwing that fit because you spoiled him. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that also. So we know that the foundation, the process forms a foundation for kids to be confident, to really be able to engage in their full intellectual and cognitive abilities in school, to be able to develop coping skills and social emotional skills, also how to engage with peers, how to engage with other adults, how to ensure that they are signaling to other adults effectively what their needs are. And I can imagine that all of us have experienced infants or toddlers that are unaware of how to cue adults to their needs. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Empathy, which is given every time an infant signals a need. A caregiver is empathetic to that need and relieves that need, which in turn infants then and toddlers then learn the skill of empathy, as well as, like we talked about, emotional regulation, social emotional development, and those kinds of things are all a process of attachment. I put this slide in here just because I want to make sure that we're paying attention to the fact that social emotional development is also synonymous with many different things. Infant mental health, oftentimes components of attachment theory, and because it's about developing the capacity of a child from birth to 5 years to form close attachments and relationships with adults and other peers, regulate and express emotions. So these kinds of things come synonymous with attachment. So again, why is social emotional development important? Again, because it helps develop all of these different things like confidence, good relationships, persistence, coping skills, listening, attentiveness, solving problems. All of these things are interconnected with attachment. So what I want to make sure that I make very clear here why I'm going through this review of attachment and the development of attachment is because the comments of spoiling a baby often come when we're holding them, when we're talking to them, and when we rush to their needs. I'm sure all of you can give me an example below in the comment portion of when you yourself have ever heard this, or if you have heard it from a child care parent saying, my mom always says I'm spoiling them, or please don't spoil them. It is a dance that we do to ensure that we are constantly meeting the needs of our children so that they may believe that the world around them is trustworthy and that they can begin the next step of attachment, which is seeking autonomy and independence, which is critical for their self-esteem and for them to begin to have experiential events to learn how to solve problems and to learn their likes and dislikes and to develop even more confidence. So I want to make sure that I'm making that clear, and if that is not clear, please let me know in the comment section so that I can make sure that I clarify that. So we're going to move on, and I'm certain a majority of you have seen this video, but we're going to go ahead and watch the still face video and then talk a little bit about what happens if we deny children the attentiveness and the responsiveness that's needed when they are young.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Okay, so here we have an example of the still face, and I'm sure several of you have seen that video. But what it is it's a beautiful demonstration of the joy that can happen between a responsive caregiving situation and the distress that can happen when that is pulled back from a child. And some would respond to that child's behavior of the screeching and the crying as being a spoiled child, when what she was doing was innately and trying to trigger her mother to respond to her and to respond to her needs. The one thing we have to remember, and we all have to be very brave to be able to share with other people, is that human beings are innately drawn to human interaction. We want to connect with other people, and we want to love. And if that is challenged, we begin to develop responses to engage that can be both negative and positive. So what that child was doing was very healthy and very expected. As she lost connection with her parent, she did what she needed to do in a healthy way by pointing and smiling, but when that didn't work, she became distressed and continued to try and cue her caregiver. So what we can see is the importance of being consistent and responsive to children so that they can continue. Because we can, if that behavior was repetitive in a home and in a child care center, that child would then begin to distrust individuals and would either amp up the negative behavior, dumping blocks, kicking and screaming, banging their head, or they would, in essence, give up and stop signaling for their cues. Is this making sense, everybody? Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So the other thing that's incredibly important to integrate into this, that I felt was important to integrate into this, was this isn't just a mumbo-jumbo part of you know, oh, I read on the internet you should respond to your baby's not bad. But really back that really surge of brain research that we've had in the last 20, 25 years. It's really showing us that these relational interactions with infants and toddlers have an impact biologically on our brain. That babies are born with 100 billion neurons. I'm sure you guys have heard that statistic before. And after these babies are born, we see the growth in brain developments, and these pathways and neurons the neurons connect through the synapses, and they develop these pathways in the brain. And each one of those pathways are developed based on experiences that they have. So we have, in essence, we could have two conflicting children with different levels of brain development. One that has consistent responsive caregiving, and one that has inconsistent. And I'll show you some pictures a little bit later down in the webinar, which some of you may have already seen, but the very clear scientific evidence of the impact that inconsistent and poor caregiving can have on a child biologically. It's not even from a, an subjective point of view of saying this or that, and I don't think that child's misbehaved. Well, I do. I mean, we have clear scientific evidence of the impact that quality caregiving can have on a child's brain. And like we talked about a couple slides before, these things, these responsive caregiving routines and interactions are constantly being reinforced by things like touch and sound and feeding and eye contact and all of those things that come with engagement and interaction with caregivers. The other interesting component of this is the concept of pruning. So again, if you have two separate children in two very different caregiving situations, one that has positive, consistent, predictable caregiving that, is loved and adored by everybody, but every teacher in a child care classroom has, they could have varying amounts of babies. They could have 8 to 12 babies in a room. And some days those babies have bad days. All 8 babies could be cranky and tired and sick that day, which means that our response time for all of them can increase and we can't get to them as quickly. That and sometimes that can invoke some anxiety in caregivers. Same situations at home. We may have a bunch of things going on, dinners cooking, people at the doorway, multiple children needing things, and babies are crying and we're not able to get to them immediately. Or they're sick and they just are not being comforted well. That can invoke anxiety in caregivers. And what we need to know that, yes, that is going to build a pathway in the brain, but what happens with pruning is you lose those experiences that are not experienced repetitively and over, we lose. So everybody can have a bad day. Everybody can have a bad couple days. Everybody can have some negative experiences in caregiving and frustration. But if those are not repeated, those are lost. And that's an incredibly impactful concept for us to understand and to be able to communicate it to families that we're working with, that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to not be perfect all the time, because if you are consistent and predictable a good chunk of the time, everything's going to be okay. We're going to quick watch another video, and then I want to show you a really nice website that is super helpful on home visits or in trainings with parents or to have available for parents about brain development and helping them understand the impact of that. Let me see here. Is there a question? I just want to. Okay. Somebody struggled with the videos. Okay. All right. So here is the next video.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the other.
It seems like maybe we're having a little bit of difficulty with that video. The buffering is pretty high. So, but the website the web address for that video is on the PowerPoint if you did want to go visit that. It was just a nice short 2-minute video that pretty much described what we just discussed, but again, reinforcing how experiences shape the brain. So again, going back to this myth of you can spoil your baby, what we want is healthy brain development. And these components of early brain development, like the video did show, it impacts behavior control, motor development, all of these different pieces of full holistic development of a young child. And so we want this consistent caregiving to be taking place because it can then impact so many different components of a child. I'm not sure how many of you have ever heard of the ACEs study, ACE study, and what that did, it was a longitudinal study that looked at several risk factors that could be present in a child's life. And what it did is longitudinally looked at, okay, if child A has 5 of the 7 risk factors and child B has 2 of the 7 risk factors, longitudinally, how could that impact them and their health across their lifespan? And what they found was the more risk factors that a child had, the more impactful it could be on their overall health. So some of these folks that had several of the risk factors ended up diabetic, with heart disease, high blood pressure, all these different sorts of physical ailments where we often associate negative upbringing with mental ailments, mental health ailments, which can also be present, but there is a whole physical being as a part of this as well. So again, consistent responsive caregiving isn't about spoiling, it's about providing a child with an opportunity for positive growth and a platform for that. Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here because I want to show you a nice resource that is on the internet that you can show your families, or you can use for that you can use to show for your own kind of treatment goals or planning for your home visits or parent-teacher conferences or therapy or whatever it is that you're working on. I'm having just some technical difficulties, but I think I have it figured out.
Tracy, this is Charlie. Do you want me to share my screen? Tracy, can you hear me?
Okay. Information. Okay. I don't see anybody typing, so I'm going to move on. I just want to make sure that I'm touching the points that you guys are looking for tonight. Okay, so moving on. So what do I do with this information? I hope that I have provided it in a way that's understandable and through my goal of how this we can buffer some of these outside inputs of spoiling with positive and responsive caregiving. So what I want to do is I want to recognize one of the key points of healthy attachment is once we develop this trust that caregivers are good, we have trust in ourselves that we're adequate. As we look into toddlers, like the next year, like year 2 and year 3, we really start to see independence and autonomy starting. Okay, we're having kids that are We're now seeing them at the park. We're seeing them at childcare where they're kind of toddling around, checking something out. They're looking back at their caregivers. They're walking back to their caregivers, and it's a constant pattern of I'm seeking out, I'm trying out some independence, but I'm checking back at you as my secure base to make sure everything's okay. We smile, we praise, and they continue on kind of building that independence and that autonomy. However, we can also think back either to our own children or children that we're working with now or families that we're working with, that this period of time in development can also offer many challenging behaviors. This is the I do it, or, you know, let me spend a million days dumping out all of your buckets of Legos and little people and have to pick them up repeatedly. And so it can really trigger a lot of battles. And what's important is that we really advocate for parents to understand different developmental stages and understand this dance that's occurring with children becoming a little bit more independent and autonomous and the benefits of that. A couple things that we also have to think about in there is where parents are coming from when you get to this part of the stage of attachment. Many parents who have healthy upbringings as well as difficult upbringings or their own histories that kind of can come up from their own childhood that can then become present in their own parenting can often be threatened by independence and autonomy. And so we have to really be able to teach families and parents and caregivers to be aware of what that means for them. It can be very fearful for them to see their child become a little bit more independent and explore, because it may trigger some need of rejection or a sense of rejection in them that their child no longer needs them. And so that's where you can often see behaviors in parents shift. They can become a little bit more suffocating or clingy, or, you know, those are kind of some negative terms that you often hear about, that because they're fearful of that independence and they're fearful of that next stage of attachment where kids become a little bit more, the distance between them is comfortable for children, and it can trigger something in parents. So just being aware of that as you are observing and supporting parents. Some parents push for that independence when children aren't quite ready yet, and then they can start to distrust that secure base that they need to be able to come back to when they become frightened or frustrated and need some support in regulating. So we want to make sure we're balancing parents to allow them the independence and the exploration, but also making sure that we are not pushing them too far away where they begin to distrust that secure base, which again can be interpreted as spoiling. So if we are supporting a child who has become frustrated because they can't get the dirt and the shovel while they're at the park, and we go support them, then we can often, you know, the labeling of spoiling can happen. But again, it's that balance of, can we guide them to be successful versus not doing for them? So we can again support the independence and autonomy. That makes sense? Does anybody have any questions? The other component here that's incredibly important to really pay attention to from infancy on is supporting parents in putting into perspective and understanding that children and infants are always cueing. They're giving us cues of what they need. In infancy, they're crying, and we have to kind of figure it out. Is it about a diaper? Is it about hunger? Is it about heat? Is it about sickness? Cues continue on through the lifespan. I'm sure all of you can tell me with your adult children, teenage children, or partners, you can tell when they've had a bad day. You can tell when they're starting to get sick. We still give cues. If we are not consistent and responsive in our caregiving and willing to learn, give the time and the patience to learn our children, we can misinterpret cues that they're giving us, which means that we respond to their need in a way that is not meeting it. So then we can have an experience of infant distrusting because the need is not met repeatedly, and an infant becoming and developing a sense of inadequacy because they feel like they are not cueing correctly. So we have this dance of really being able to be aware and present and observe the different needs and to be willing to try different things and recognize that just when a child gets old enough to stop crying for every need, that their cues continue, and it's important to be mindful of that and to pay attention to those different things. Does that make sense? Okay, so talk a little bit about the setting limits for children. Those look different dependent on every temperament, and it's important that when you're setting limits, you're not squashing a sense of desire for independence and autonomy, but you continue to encourage it in a way that's supportive to keep them safe, as well as encourage further exploration and problem solving. One thing I want to make sure that I do highlight is, as professionals, when we support families, we have to make sure that we're taking the time to look at where are parents coming from and how do they see this, which is referencing a little bit about what I just talked about. Am I fearful if they explore too much they won't need me? And what if they don't need me? Does it mean I'm not a good mother because he doesn't want me around? Or, oh, I've got to be right there for him all the time. I can't let him do this. Or, no, you need to go. Shake it off. You can do it. Or, I can't be bothered with that right now. So what are parents seeing and feeling and viewing in these different, kind of on this continuum of care when they become toddlers and really start to explore their independence and autonomy? So that is our charge and incredibly important for us to do, so that parents can begin to understand themselves and support their children and not miss cues for their needs. Some information that I do want to make sure I share with you guys. It's phenomenal. And Charlie, I don't know if we can give this a try again, but there is a website on here. It's Parenting Counts. There are handouts. Oh, I'm so scared. I want to try it so bad. But there are beautiful handouts on this website. It's a phenomenal parenting coach website. Can we? Basically, the process of attachment through explore the need to support and delight and be present with me in a happy way and love me, but then also be able to support me during very challenging times, and to be able to continue to regulate my emotions and teach me how to problem solve. And in a way that discusses the need for parents to be present and strong, and teaches things about how our different behaviors can impact a child's attachment process, and in conjunction behavior. So really, it teaches a nice, beautiful process of allowing parents to be present with their children in some really good caregiving strategies, which again can strengthen that need to be present and decrease kind of this myth of if I do these things, I'm spoiling my child, but rather you're providing them some quality caregiving. This, and Charlie, I don't know if you can click on this and show them this, but these are really wonderful, beautiful cue cards of infants that is through Promoting First Relationships, which is a home visitation program to support quality infant caregiving relationships. And these come in a box, and they are beautiful cue cards. Anybody has any really enjoyed or wanted to hear more of? Okay, so you want to hear more about the Circle of Security training. There was a training about 2 weeks ago that happened in Kearney, so you cannot get trained by anybody but the folks at the International Center of Circle of Security. They come out and they train providers to provide parent education. So it's a parenting education class that can last anywhere from 6 to 10 sessions. And it focuses on the circle of security, which is understanding how to support your children in quality interactions and caregiving, as well as how to support them when they may be challenging or they may need something, and understanding yourself as an individual and what you're bringing from your own childhood and how that can kind of the lingo that they talk about is when you go off the circle, how you can repair that, because everybody has a bad day. You know, we're not perfect parents all the time ever. And so how you can kind of go off the circle and have a difficult moment, but come back and repair that with your child. It's a really good training. I'm not quite sure where you're from to know. Marsha, where are you from? And we might be able to hook you up with someone who did get trained. Ainsworth. Okay. So I'm going to write your name down. And I'm going to find out. I know there was people from Ainsworth that were at the training. I'm pretty sure I actually sat at a table with them. Charlie just put the website up, and I believe that should have a list of the people who were trained as well. But I will do some work to get you hooked up with them as well. Okay, there was another question. When a parent says, please don't hold my child all day, how do you reply to them? Okay, so I would recommend if a parent comes in and says, please don't hold my child all day, then they expect to be held all the time at home. I think you can say, in our child care center or in my home, whatever sort of caregiving environment you're in, I am going to definitely provide your kiddo the best care that they can have. And if they need me to hold them, to support them in whatever they're trying to move through, I'm going to do that. Am I going to encourage them to play independently on the floor? Absolutely. I may be playing with them, but I am going to be present with them when they need me, because I believe that that's the best care that I can give your baby. And so I think you just need to hold strong to what you believe is right for children, but also respect a parent's needs. So if they are like, please don't hold my baby, please don't hold my baby, but you know that that child needs some interaction, you can do it. Hold them. But you can also have some time on floor time together and play some wonderful games with peekaboo, with the, the see-through transparent handkerchiefs, and do some different things where you can stay connected and interactive with them, but always, always meet their needs. Learn their cues and meet their cues no matter what, because you've got to take care of those babies while they're with you. Was that an okay response, Tiffany? Sure. I hope that was helpful. Does anybody else have any questions? Comments? Okay, I don't see anybody typing. Are you sure nobody has anything? Okay, Charlie, do you want to talk a little bit about survey and completing that before they go? So I believe once the PowerPoint turns off, there will be a survey that pops up for you that you need to complete. And we sure appreciate your time, and we appreciate any feedback that you can give us around the quality of this webinar, what you may be looking for in other webinars, so that we can make sure that we can provide those to you. Thanks, guys.